What's up guys, and welcome back to another Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon video. And in this video I'm going to be talking about Rowlet's evolution line, possibilities for, what the evolutions may look like, what types they might be, as well as what sort of inspirations they will draw, what animals are they going to be based on basically, because that helps us to then see typings and designs and such like that. I'll talk a bit about probably base stats and sort of strengths about the Pokemon as well, and what sort of what typing and sort of effectiveness, I guess, and strengths and such the Pokemon too. But let's just jump in. So Rowlet is currently a grass flying type, so generally you'd assume that would carry all the way through the evolution line. When we've had it before, for example with Bulbasaur, it is carried all the way through. I can't think of any sort of instances where a Pokemon has gained a typing in its secondary evolution and then lost it in its third one. Charizard, yes, obviously it's fire flying and it loses its flying type when it becomes a Mega, but a Mega is a completely different story. However, it would seem like if any Pokemon is going to have a type change, in terms of starters, Rowlet is going to be the one to do it, because generally having a sort of a type, a dual typing this early on could lead to a type change, and this leads on to the starter leak from last night. Apologies if people aren't looking to get leaked, but of course this is all speculation anyway. This isn't sort of one of the main leaks, I guess, but there was a ground typing listed, and it didn't really seem to fit in with the fire since it came before fire. So some people, there's been a lot of discussion since the video, and people are saying, instead of, because it's the wrong side, you have grass, flying, ground, why, what if Rowlet's final evolution changes to be grass, ground, or secondary, probably not secondary evolution, we're talking about final evolution here, changes to a grass, ground type, and I feel like that's a really strong possibility for some reasons I'll talk about in the video. But first things first, we're going to look at some possible designs for Rowlet's sort of mid-evolution, so its first evolution, the middle Pokemon, so level 16 to level 32, 36, something like that. And see, you can see all these designs. I'll hopefully put most of the, all the design links down below, so if you want to check any of them out, click on those links and all of the design, all the art will be down there. But you can see sort of a generic consensus is that the middle evolution will be some sort of middle-sized owl, an owl that's fairly tall, and basically a taller Rowlet base. Taking Rowlet's body and putting it on the head of another owl. You can see, with all these designs, you have wings, a body, all of that stuff. There's nothing too really special in any of these. The only sort of one to point out is the top right. You can see here is slightly sort of smaller, sort of same size as Rowlet, which I couldn't see happening as well, so I would expect, a middle-sized owl, like most of these designs here. It's nothing too extra there. What sort of might inspire these designs? Well, there are two sort of inspirations, at least for this sort of body structure. The first one is the Puyo, which is a owl unique to Hawaii. It's only found in Hawaii, and a lot of people, have been saying Hawaii is one of the areas in the world where most of the animal species are unique to Hawaii, because obviously it's islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, or is it Pacific? I'm pretty sure it's Pacific. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, so animals can't really, they can't fly or easily get over there. The only way they can be brought on, apart from birds, of course, will be via boats and aeroplanes and such. So the Puyo is a short-eared owl unique to Hawaii, so that likely is already the inspiration for an owl being one of the starters anyway, and will likely be very similar to the sort of the middle one in the line. And there's also the burrowing owl, which links into the grass ground typing I was talking about, and sort of is another sort of inspiration for the ground typing anyway. And these owls are, they live in North and South America. They're active during the day as opposed to night, and they also live in grasslands as opposed to forests. Most owls live in forests, up in the trees, and they can swoop down and hunt. These owls, the burrowing owls live in grasslands. I don't think they actually they might do some sort of burrowing, but they don't live underground, I wouldn't expect. But burrowing owls obviously have some link to the ground. They're the more ground-based. They live in grasslands, so they're not exactly up the tree most of the time. So that links to the ground typing then. But of course, as I mentioned just now, I wouldn't really see the middle evolution changing type. You want to have at least one, some bit of grass flying, otherwise you lose the grass flying at level 16 and then you don't get any bonus or any benefit of it. So I'd expect them keeping that and having it change for the final evolution. Now I'm going to have two sets of final evolutions here, one being sort of, if it were to stay grass flying, and the other if it to change to grass ground, what possibilities you could see here. And here are the grass flying type designs, and you can see most of them very similar. Once more, you have a tall owl with nice broad wings that can then fly. Picking out some here. Top left, I really love that majestic design. It looks almost like an actual owl that's covered in leaves. And also the middle right one, that looks amazing in my opinion. I would love that to be the actual owl, actual final evolution of Rowlet. And also the bottom left as well, you can see I love this tree stump up in its head. That looks amazing. I love sort of the design feature of that. Sort of the only odd one out here is the bottom right one, which again is very sort of small and doesn't have a taller sort of stature, and they could go for like a bulky owl like that, but who knows. And the other sort of odd one out is the top middle one, which instead of using the sort of the same colours is going completely different colour, but that could happen. The owl, Rowlet might not keep the same colour style necessarily. It could change fairly drastically and have a nice different sort of design for the final evolution, as opposed to basically being an owl, the same owl all 3 stages and hardly ever changing. So those are the grass flying options, and these are the grass ground options. Now grass ground is slightly different. Either you want a burrowing owl sort of thing, or there's a sort of another couple of inspirations that they could draw from here. I'll talk about that after this, but you can see I've divided these 5 into 2 sets. The left one is griffin-like, and the right one are tall owls. So you can see the griffin-like are basically 4 quadrupeds. And they're on 4 legs, 4 claws, 4 feet or whatever. They have a longer body, but they still, at least the left one still looks like an owl. You've got again the tree stump sort of design there, and you can see it's got wings tucked in its back. It's very similar to a hippogriff, for example, from Harry Potter. And it could still be classed as an owl basically in terms of the head and such. The bottom one obviously is not quite as similar, but it's sort of similar in the aspect. Why is this more likely to be grass ground? Well, of course, this Pokemon you can't really see flying as much. Is not sort of flying isn't its main thing. The fact that it's quadruped might then link into the ground typing there. Then the other 3, as I mentioned, these are tall owls. Obviously the first one isn't really as tall, but the second 2, as you can see, are basically very tall legs. The top right one being based on a tree, and the bottom one, again being an owl that's just got tall, long legs. Now where does this come from? Well, firstly, there's the stilt owl, which were 4 species of owls, I believe, exclusive to Hawaii once more, and that are now extinct. They lived on Hawaii, but when people started to colonize it, these owls were eventually wiped out because of the introduction of land mammals, which then obviously it was to catch the owls and sort of take over their environment fairly easily. But these were owls basically on long legs. Long-legged owls, instead of an owl being a little pudgy, it's got long legs, so it would, they would actually walk around on these legs and catch other birds as well. They could still fly, but it was more likely for them to walk around on their long legs. Those are stilt owls. There's no pictures of them because they're extinct. But again, these tall owls could be linked to them. There are also 2 other options that may sort of work for grass ground in terms of the typing. The first of these is the Cuban giant owl, which is an owl that lived 126,000 years ago. I believe I've read that correctly. But a long time ago. It's extinct now once more, but it was about 1 meter in height, so it was a pretty damn big owl, and it lived on Cuba. Obviously that's not Hawaii, but it's a similar island sort of like thing. It also links into grass type starters having a link of prehistoric in some cases, like Meganium is based on a dinosaur, as is, it's a very full of weak link, but a lot of the grass types could be based off of prehistoric sort of animals, and this giant owl would then link into that. The other option is the kakapo, which is called the owl parrot. So it's not actually an owl, it's a parrot, but it is called the owl parrot, so it could link in there. And this is actually a flightless ground-dwelling parrot, and I'm sure you guys have seen this before. There's been several videos I've seen online of this cute little thing. It's cute in my opinion at least, and obviously this could link in as well. It's green, so grass typing links in straight away there, and the fact that it's ground dwelling one might link into the fact that grass ground. But what are my choices for what would I like to see? Well, obviously you have Rowlet here. Middle evolution, I would like to see this sort of design, a middle-sized owl. This one looks closest to Sugimori art, which is why I've chosen this one. But it's not too fancy, it's not too basic, and obviously I'd like to see that stay grass flying. And then the final evolution, I would love to see a griffin-like design for it, like this one here. This one looks I can't get over how awesome this looks. You can tell it's an owl because of the face, but it has this griffin, hippogriff-like features to it, and I could very much see it being a grass ground type, which would be just awesome. I want a grass ground. Obviously we had Torterra before, and I would be fine with grass flying, but grass ground is another option, and it would fit in with the starter leak. So those are just my opinions, of course, though. Feel free to let me know what you want to see for Rowlet down below. Of course, a lot of people say Rowlet is the Pokemon they're going to choose. If it turns into a grass ground type, are you still going to choose it, or do you think it's going to impact upon your choice of starter, basically? Let me know down below what you think, and let me know what you're hoping from the Rowlet evolution line. But for now, this is going to be it for me for today. I'll be seeing you next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, my friends.